Collected Tales of a Dublin Doctor. This podcast is a series of tales written by my father, Patrick Beaufin, and rediscovered in a file at the back of a press 30 years after his passing. The Ghosts of Another Day. There's a lot of interest nowadays in the Liffey Quays in Dublin. So much has been demolished. Other areas are in very poor repair and will be knocked soon. The rumoured plans for rebuilding are the subject of great controversy. For those of us who remember the quays of some years ago, all this is a matter of great sadness. Burgh Quay still stands, but in a much reduced state. The Corn Exchange is the most impressive building there, but for me, it was always a closed grey forbidding place. The Irish press offices were without character. During the years of the last war and those following it, Burgh Quay was a throbbing centre of bohemian fun. The White Horse Inn was a pub on a corner near the Irish press. It was small. Downstairs was a local where men in hats and peaked caps drank pints of Guinness plain. Rarely was any other drink served. Upstairs was so different. It was the watering hole for the players at the Theatre Royal in nearby Hawkins Street. When the stage show finished, they appeared. Always first to arrive were the giggling, twittering, cigarette-smoking royalettes. The chorus line, exotic in their Leichner 5 stage makeup. They all wore overcoats. But we knew that underneath they were still in their stage tights. Occasionally a coat might part and one saw a flash of thigh coloured with miners' liquid makeup. Eddie Byrne, who preceded Eamon Andrews as compere of the quiz show, Double or Nothing, would shuffle in, cigarette drooping from the corner of his mouth, eyes screwed up against the pillar of smoke, dropping one-liners like autumn leaves. How we missed him when he went on to his great career in films. Always last to arrive was Jimmy Campbell, the conductor of the orchestra, tweed coat draped over the full evening dress. He invariably paused just inside the door, not just for effect, but to allow time for somebody who didn't know him well to say, "What'll you have?" The answer was always, "A large power." Further up the quay was the Scotch House, probably the best-known pub in Dublin in those days. It had both a passing trade and a band of regulars, some from the legitimate theatre, artists, writers, the usual percentage of poseurs, and of course, journalists. The best known of the last group was Brian O'Nolan, better known as Miles Nagopaleen, who wrote Crushkeen Lawn, a brilliant series in the Irish Times. He usually sat at the side, and as time went on, he scribbled furiously to meet the deadline. For Miles, writing was thirsty work, but he persisted even if the table became littered with glasses. How many of the Keats and Chapman anecdotes had their first airing in the Scotch House? Totally different was the third place I remember, the Fun Palace, full of cheap gaming machines and tawdry displays, was, of itself, of little interest. However, it deserves a mention in the local history for an incident in 1953. On the 6th of October, it was reported to the then coroner for the city by a man who described himself as a legal experimenter that the dead body of a leprechaun was on display in a glass jar at the Fun Palace. He demanded that the coroner investigate the circumstances of the death and threatened that if he failed to do so, he would apply to the High Court for an order of mandamus, compelling the coroner to hold an inquest. Widespread public disquiet ensued, with extensive press coverage in the newspapers of this country and Great Britain. The coroner, not fully convinced that the dead body of a leprechaun constituted human remains, requested a full Garda investigation. The Garda report informed the coroner that the said leprechaun was, in fact, a mushroom which had grown in the shape of a man. On the day following the Garda investigation, the body was stolen. Detectives made inquiries. The owner couldn't place a value on it, but as there had been a charge of sixpence to view it, stood to lose £2 a week in fees as a result of the theft. It was never recovered, and no person was made amenable for the larceny. I have no doubt but that developers will come to Burgh Quay. They will do so at their peril. They must first run the gauntlet of the ghosts of another day.